Started lessons, right?
Yeah, right.
I would like to call to order the Monday, July 15th meeting of the City of Monona City Council. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Rademacher.
Here.
Alder Bernstein.
Here.
Alder DePula.
Here.
Alder Holmquist.
Here.
Alder Moore.
Here.
Alder Wood.
Here?
Mayor O'Connor.
Here, please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, is there a motion to approve the minutes of the July 1st meeting?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Moving on to appearances, we have one in-person appearance tonight from Mary Ann Reed. If you'd like to come up and take a seat at the table. She'd like to speak regarding the diversity implementation report.
Hi, my name is Mary Ann Reed, 5602 Winnequa Road in Monona. I urge you to accept the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Implementation Report. In this report, we recognize the work that has been done and make recommendations for action for future work to be done. This report and its recommendations should not be seen as a box checked off, problem solved, or finish line reached, but rather as a starting line in a marathon of work that needs to be done to celebrate diversity, know our history, to be inclusive, and to act equitably so all people will feel they belong in Monona. We received some feedback that asked for further definition of what was meant by space of empowerment. This is a space, a place where you can feel free to be yourself, to excel, to have your heritage celebrated, to breathe easy, and to not feel your every action is under a critical microscope. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We also received communications in favor of approval of or acceptance of the report from Jason Chung, John Anderson, and Jesse Claringbowl, as well as Katie Kaufman. So thank you. There is no public hearing. There is no consent agenda. Moving on to council action items. We have two items under unfinished business. The first is which Item 1A, consideration of Resolution 24-7-2420, acceptance of ad hoc work group on diversity and equity issues report to council, Monona DEIB implementation plan recommendations put forth by the ad hoc diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging implementation committee. Is there a motion to approve this?
Motion to approve.
Second. I know we discussed this at the last meeting. Are there any more comments or concerns, Brian?
I just had a question for Mary Ann, and it had to do with, I just couldn't hear part of your comment, and it was like something to the effect of there were questions regarding a definition of something, but I didn't hear what the answer was or what it was referring to. I just wanted to be sure I understood.
Some feedback we got from the staff on the report is that for further definition of what was meant by space of empowerment. And this is a place where you can be free to be yourself, to excel, to have your heritage celebrated, to breathe easy, and to not feel like your every action is under a critical microscope.
Okay. Thank you.
Alder Bernstein.
We're being asked whether or not to accept
Mm-hmm.
the report, which means there's no obligation that we endorse everything in the project. Is that correct? In the report?
Neil, do you want to?
Yeah, I think in
I
terms
don't know
of,
if that's quite it.
yeah, I mean, certainly by acknowledging and accepting the report, it certainly is, like I said, in terms of being the first step of why staff even took the effort of writing that original memorandum that was with your packet, Alder, was to start, to identify it as I think Mary Ann indicated, as a starting place of work to be done. So I think that's certainly could be, I guess, semantics to some extent, but I mean, that is, we are treating that as those recommendations, and we are looking to, staff is actively looking to seeing which ones we can move forward with and implement. So we are already in process of
Okay.
doing that, just to be clear.
But,
So-
I mean, the city wrote a 14-page memo about other considerations that need to be balanced with the report, correct?
That is
So-
correct.
So there'll be a lot of sifting and winnowing.
Yeah, this will be, I think also, as Marion said, this is an ongoing discussion, and in terms of evaluating community priorities and as we move on to implement these things. And again, not to implement them as a separate standalone item, but as incorporating them as part of our standard operating practices. So in terms of when we're doing a proposal for, like right now, I'm working on requests for proposals for strategic planning and for updating our housing element. Well, we are incorporating several of the recommendations that were included in that report as part of the requirements into that RFP. So we're actively implementing some of those recommendations. So I just want to say that from a staff standpoint, we are treating those as they are a list of recommendations from the committee, and we are trying to implement and incorporate those that we feel we can already do that. So as accepting the report, kind of verifies, I think, what staff is already trying to work on with the report.
Alderwood?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that when we did the PED bike plan, that we also accepted that plan, that we didn't adopt it, but we've used it since as guidance on future projects, so.
Is adopting it an option in this case, or?
Well, we're going to accept it. That's what we typically do with a report like
Yeah.
this, is we accept
Okay.
it. Teresa,
Well,
did
I
you?
think Alder Moore had her hand up first.
Alder Moore?
Yeah, well, I was gonna, just as a follow-up to what Doug said, and then can respond to it as well. I mean, it's not that we don't embrace what's in the report. And by accepting it, we're saying that we embrace it, and we're gonna be integrating it into, as best we can, into city operations. Because we can't, just like with the bike ped plan, I mean, if we approved the bike ped plan as opposed to accepting the bike ped plan, that would cost us multi-millions of dollars to do all of that, and just realistically, there's no way that we could do that all at once, or would necessarily want to. Things change. So, our budgets change, our priorities need to change, and so by accepting it, we're saying we very much embrace what's in there, and we're gonna integrate it as much as we can, as fast as we can, given all the other priorities.
Anyone else? Alder Rademacher?
Yeah, I think just to, another perspective, Rick, would be like, let's just say there's, a list of 30 things on the recommendations, and the city intends to do, 29 of them. If we say we accept, it means we're intending to do 100% of those things, and we already know, based on feedback from staff, that some of those things just may not be possible to do.
Right.
Yeah, so that's the technical
Yeah,
difference
that
there.
was-
Yeah, okay.
That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
What level of obligation do we?
Oh, I see what you're saying, okay.
Neil?
And I think the other thing, it's a bit of a bureaucratic formality, but if we have an adopted plan, every time we would need to do something that was different from that plan, it would need to come back and be formally amended by this body, if we wanted to make it officially an action.
I wanted to understand it.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of, if it's formally adopted, it is a hard and fast policy, but then in terms of, there's no flexibility in terms of having to come back, and this way, it's, I think I said in the staff report I provided, assuming that that's gonna be a charge of me as your administrator, to be providing regular updates on progress and things that we've made, certainly in a formal manner, at least once a year, but probably even more as an ongoing report as we do that, to kind of identify if we've made progress on a particular item. As part of my report at each council meeting, to be including those items on there, so.
All right. Thank you.
But that was good.
Anyone
It's
else?
good to explain the difference, so, yeah, thank you for asking that.
Anyone else? Okay, then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next item, consideration of resolution 24-7-2421, award of contract for Winnequa Park Trail expansion put forth by the Park and Recreation Board. Is there a motion to approve this?
Move to approve?
Second?
Was Jake going to be here? Or?
Have not heard from
Jake just texted me that he's running behind, and then asked if I could cover the second read.
Okay. Did you want to address this, then, Patrick, or?
I mean, yeah, let's see. Give me a second. Sorry, I'm just trying to get a,
I could take a
Or
whack
Doug,
at it
you
too.
wanna-
if you
Doug, you want to do it?
So this is just awarding the bid contract to Hamburg. They were the low bidder. It was pretty competitive bidding. It's under budget. Yeah. Part of the money will go to, or part of the work will be at the Schaefer Shelter, but primarily it's to construct the new, the ped bike plan, the trail on the north half of Winnequa Park.
And I was actually, just speaking of the bike ped plan, looking at that today. This is one of the recommendations in the bike ped plan, that over time, we try to get these things done, but obviously they don't happen overnight, so. Any comments or questions about it? I think it's
No.
going to be a great addition to the park. Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Bernstein,
Aye.
Alder DePula,
Aye.
Alder Holmquist,
Aye.
Alder Moore,
Aye.
Alder Wood,
Aye.
Alder Rademacher.
Aye. Motion passes, thank you. Moving on to new business, and this one is start for immediate approval. Item 2A, consideration of the 2024-2025 Class B fermented malt beverage and Class C wine licenses for the Abbott Hotel by IHG, 900 West Broadway, put forth by the License Review Committee. Alder Wood, would you like to explain why it started for immediate approval?
Well,
Or
Aline
maybe-
might be able to
maybe-
answer, but I think it's, basically, so we're already into the licensing year, so I think they'd like to go ahead and get the license to have it for as much of the year as they can.
Yeah, get the license, and they do want to start selling for the Badger game, so this would allow them to prep their area and get that set up in time to do
Yeah.
that.
Is your question about the immediate approval?
Yes.
Okay.
But it might,
Or would you rather wait till we're discussing the item?
well, I guess before we do the immediate approval, I guess I have a
Okay.
question on process. And we have probationary licenses available, right? For,
Probationary, not,
we don't have I'm sorry, not probationary, provisional. Like, if it's, like in this case, would a provisional license be warranted while we wait for the second read so they can start, or no?
Aline can correct me if I'm wrong, but or Bill, the provisional licenses are for operators. I don't think we do them for establishments.
Because I know like with the city of Madison, they'll do a provisional license if it's going to be granted, but in a situation like this, if someone misses the deadline, whatever, and it's an operating entity, so I'm just curious, because then what would be the reason to take it out of order if we can do a provisional license?
Well, you don't have the provisional on the agenda for tonight.
Okay.
So you could certainly put it on for the next meeting, but then that defeats the purposes of doing
Yeah.
it in one reading.
Okay.
I mean, what provisional licenses for operators that can be issued, right, before they get approved. Can they do that for establishments? I guess I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, I guess I don't know off the top of my head.
It sounds like Madison does.
Our practice in Monona has always been provisional licenses for operators.
Yeah.
I don't recall one ever being issued for an establishment.
Gotcha. Okay.
Is there a motion to take this out of order?
I'll move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Doug, did you want to?
It's obviously for the Avid Hotel. They explained, I'm assuming nobody's here on Zoom from Avid, okay. Well, they expressed that they felt like they were at a competitive disadvantage to not being able to offer their guests beer or wine to drink, and they'll have a small, it'll be in their lobby. They're gonna have all of their staff, I believe, except that are of age, will be licensed bartenders. So obviously make sure that you have somebody at the point of sale who is licensed. This is for fermented malt beverages and wine. There's 2 of them, but not hard liquor. So it's not a full class, it's not a bar license.
Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item, 2B, consideration of resolution 24-7-2422, approval of general development plan, GDP, for 112 to 208 Owen Road by Slendy Realty Company, put forth by the Plan Commission. I think Mr. Plowman is going to do a little introduction here, and then the Slendys will be speaking as well. So Doug?
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. This is the first read on the General Development Plan GDP request for the Slendy Realty Company. Their development at 112 to 208 Owen Road, the former Village Lane site, as well as the USPS strip mall as well. So the request here, the General Development Plan is sort of more of the master plan itself, the overview. It would be a 2-phase development that would include 237 multifamily units at full build-out. Split across the 2 phases with 132 in phase 1. First phase would be looking to redevelop the Village Lane site first, and that would be the western most parcel of the 2. This came through Plan Commission twice in 2024. Came through most recently the 2nd meeting in June, where it was unanimously recommended for approval to City Council. And I'll certainly let the Slendys give some more detail, but this did come through for an approved GDP in May of 2022. Changes were made to the previously approved GDP for a number of reasons, and it was determined that sort of restarting new GDP would be the best way to do this, and that was what they did, and ultimately that was unanimously recommended by the Plan Commission. I'm here for questions, but I'll pass it to the developers to give a little more detail.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
I'm Brett Slendy.
Jeff Slendy.
Basically, we're extremely enthused and excited to be able to bring this project forward. We started working on this in 2021. A lot of things have obviously changed. The dynamics have changed. One thing that hasn't changed is the need for additional housing in Monona. It is real. I think you all know that. And being able to bring this forward is something that we have been very committed to. And our design work, we've worked with the Plan Commission, as Doug said, that we've had a couple meetings, we've listened, there's been recommendations, some of them which we could do, some of which we couldn't do. But primarily, we have just been pushing and pushing and pushing to get this to a point of reality. There's still a long way to go. The financing aspects are very complicated. It's a whole different world than it was in 2022. I mean, different. And we'll need to work with the CDA to work with us to be able to get this to a point of being able to finance it. From a construction side of things, we're really pleased to be able to bring this property to the city. It's going to have wonderful amenities, gathering spaces, underground parking, EV stations. It is a 2-phase development. Initially, the first approval was 174 units. At that time, CDA was uncomfortable with our TIF request at that point, so we went back to try to look at a greater density, and there was just a little conflict between density at that time. Fortunately, the density issue has been addressed. We've also taken into consideration that we extended the post office lease for an additional 2 years, only to find out that we read in the paper that we wouldn't renew their lease. So we were a little sideswiped with that, which kind of caused us to take a look at this in terms of the phasing. And the phasing is looking to, we'll start the Village Lanes project or component, and then as that evolves, we'll quickly move into the remainder. That's, you have the design work in front of you. We also conducted a traffic study that showed that the increased density when the retail is removed has a minimal impact. So that's.
Yeah, we actually asked our traffic study folks, how many apartments could this light handle without additional work done on it? And they said 1,000. So there's considerable capacity left in that light, and we're excited about, breaking ground here as we can.
We really are enthused about the idea of how this will appeal to a variety of people in Monona, outside of Monona as well. And as you know, there's many, many people that are in homes that have been there 20, 30 years that love to move, but they're not moving out of Monona. And so they stay where they are. And hopefully this will provide an opportunity for that to occur. We also see that there's lots of younger folks that are wanting to move into Monona that are financially unable to buy a house. And a lot of these people are from Monona, born and raised in Monona, went to school elsewhere. They come back because it's Monona. And we're enthused about being able to provide this level of housing. So.
Do you want to explain just a little bit about what the difference is between the GDP the council approved in 2022 and the new one? Like you've added an extra story, right? There's some additional
Yes.
apartments. Do you want to just go into that a little bit?
Sure. We had an additional story on both properties and additional underground parking. The surface parking is relatively the same. We were able to pick up underground, though, as a way to fill the parking requirement. But those are the main...
And you added more apartments to it, didn't you?
Yeah, well, the fifth story, yes, we added, 64, I believe it was 63 apartments.
The first approval was 174, and it's 237, as I recall.
Yeah.
And we dropped the requirement of having commercial because the post office
That's a
is no longer
significant-
there as an anchor, so they were able to
Yeah.
use that additional
Which,
space.
Unfortunately, that was a part of what occurred, but it also helped us with our parking requirement. So the commercial piece has a little bit more involved parking requirement than residential that we backfilled with.
The nice thing is regarding the appearance of it, the offices and the exercise facilities will all be up front on Owen Road. It will have a really nice appearance from the street. And
Yeah, it'll look commercial in nature.
Yeah.
We're not having any residential pieces fronting Owen Road.
Alderman Moore?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one other thing, and that is that the other thing that the Planning Commission wheeled back on is the original discussion around 50% of one of the two buildings being workforce housing. And there was a couple of reasons behind that. One is that there was a change in the unit mix, as Bert just alluded to, and we hear it all the time from developers. The reality is not only are younger people not able to buy homes, but they don't want roommates. They would prefer studios. I mean, that's just the way the market is going. So there's smaller, what would be more affordable units for younger individuals or other individuals that are in the workforce, number one. And number two, the way the development lays out, it's not necessarily something that would be of particular interest to entities like WIDA. It's just in terms of where it is and the amenities and the whole point system that WIDA uses, it just wouldn't be as attractive. So So there's some affordability there. It's certainly not the luxury apartments of the current or something like that. But that's no longer a requirement.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Well, just along those lines, I guess one of the terms being used in today's housing markets is attainable housing. You know, it's not luxury, it's not income restricted. It's, for lack of a better term, it's kind of in that missing middle discussion, but it's attainable. You know, you're gonna have people making, $36,000 a year living here up to a couple hundred. I mean, it just depends on the tenant profile, so that's where we're looking to fill that gap.
Any questions, anyone? Alderwood?
So, I guess I'm not clear on whether there's any portion of it that's set aside or required to be for workforce housing?
No.
There's not, okay.
No,
So that's a
it's-
change.
I mean-
The rents themselves, though.
Yeah.
It's kind of naturally occurring affordable housing is one way to look at it. It's not
Right.
rent restricted. So like, for example, if you lived in a studio and you were paying $1,300 a month, that means you're making about $3,900 a month. That means you're making about $45,000 a year.
Right.
So,
And is that, do you know what the range of rents will be?
it's all a function of the marketplace and what we can defend to our lender and what we can defend to the CDA.
Right.
So,
But you're looking at sort of, their market rate, but sort of mid-level market rate, would you
yeah,
say?
yes, the word I used was attainable, so it's kind of
Yeah.
in that middle
Right.
piece.
I mean, I know market rate sometimes is used pejoratively, but like, that's what most of us pay for our housing. It's
Well, when you factor in real estate taxes and all the things that go into home ownership, I mean, this is a very appealing option for people.
Particularly when you think about if you're in your mid-30s, late 30s, and you need to put 20% down on a house. I don't know many people that's got 80 grand sitting around they can part with that are at that age group. And if they went in with 10% down, I think the same dynamic holds true. And that's why you're seeing this enormous swelling of renters that are any one of us. So,
Yeah, they're well qualified, they might not have the savings, they might be in the transition period where they just moved to town, they don't know where they want to live. It might be Monona, it might be Wanakee, you don't know.
the other thing that we've heard loud and clear is that the businesses in Monona, a lot of their people have to travel to work here. And we've heard that from, I guess I shouldn't reveal any names particularly, but
Quite a few.
And we've also heard from the business community, loud and clear, that they're very supportive of this project. People are eager to have more customers, and this will provide some more customers. It's not a huge impact, but it's a start, so.
Alder Bernstein?
Yeah, I'm just kind of a little curious about the post office. You say you signed the lease,
Mhm.
but then they pulled out of the lease?
No, so we currently own the Monona Center property,
Right.
and that's what we're referring to when we signed a 2-year lease. We signed a 2-year lease in January of 2024, so it takes us to July 2026.
Okay.
But in their lease, they have a 90 or 180-day out. So they've since gone and signed a lease somewhere else because we haven't had anything approved here that was going to be constructed.
Is that River Place?
It is.
Because I went into the post office and what they told me is that no new lease has been signed.
You know, there are so many rumors that may be. I first heard about it from, I think you, who overheard.
I heard about it at the post office too.
Yeah, so.
If you want, we can produce an email from the broker that said it's signed.
That it's what?
It's signed at the new location.
In River Place?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't, and this is by no means out of disrespect, but, when you're going to the post office, you're talking to employees. They're not the ones that are signing the contracts or doing the negotiations. So, they might even be the last ones to know.
I think originally, though, I I had heard, I think, that they were gonna be moving in August, and now it apparently isn't gonna happen until like next spring. Is that
That's the impression that we're under.
the latest?
But we don't get, and the interesting thing about dealing with the post office is that there's kind of a revolving door of who you deal with. So
And they're located in Colorado, aren't they, or something? I mean, they're not.
The
Washington.
regional manager was in Colorado, the broker's in Washington DC.
Wow. I just hope we can keep a post office in Monona.
Well,
That's-
yeah.
Yeah.
So did we.
Yeah, same. But it's our understanding that the lease has been signed,
Okay.
so.
Nancy?
Yeah, I just wanted to say one other thing, because I'm sure that I can imagine, just like even myself as chair of the plan commission, that there was some disappointment that we're not, that this particular development is going to have a formal workforce housing arrangement. And yet, as Jeff just pointed out, this does address the missing middle, which, as you recall from the previous report, that the Plan Commission put together and shared with this body, we need as much that as anything else, number one. And number two, this doesn't lessen our commitment to workforce housing where it's appropriate, and when it's appropriate from a financial standpoint. But this isn't it.
Anyone else?
I'm just curious, looking at some renderings of the building, it's a very beautiful building. Will commercial ever be possible on the first floor? It kind of looks as though it might, but maybe even though it isn't.
Right, yeah, it's designed to have a commercial appeal. That said, I don't know, the interest level from a retailer. It's,
We've consulted, we're in the real estate business, obviously. We've had retail on Monona Drive. The demand and the caliber of retail at that particular point, it isn't great.
Yeah.
So it is, and there's plenty of vacant buildings on Monona Drive.
Sure.
And we just don't want to be one of them on Owen Road.
Don't blame you.
And the lenders, by the way, completely ignored that as a potential income, because they look at it as a revolving door and not sustainable.
Well, I think I even mentioned in passing to Jeff, dog walks, that I'm so glad to see it go to the 5th story and to add additional units.
Neil?
Just a quick comment on that, Alderman Marker, too, that in terms of, and gentlemen, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the code requirements that would be needed to do it as a commercial space make it fairly expensive to do that and have it be residential, and
Yeah.
or make it be residential and then have to convert it. It's not exactly an easy switch.
Yeah.
So it does, that also presents some challenges in terms of long-term. Now, certainly not that couldn't be done,
Sure.
but there's definitely some code and cost restrictions to trying to have it be convertible, I guess.
Got
I
it.
would say. So.
Thank you. Anyone else? Alder Holmquist?
And this might be more appropriate for the PIP section, so Doug and others, if so, we'll take it then. But I've seen this many times, and the key pieces that I'm still wrestling with and trying to understand is, one, the significant below the 30% green space. So I wanted to just hear more about that piece of it and maybe what was discussed in that plan and what other elements are allowed plan to move that forward unanimously, and just be helpful for me to hear that and probably others to hear that. The 5th story and the density, it's impressive that the density was able to be increased and make up for it even in the parking, and probably from the commercial side is what was the big balancing factor. And Doug, my guess is from reading your report, that's that kind of balancing piece that's probably affecting the 30%. But where that's getting kind of shifted to, it would be helpful. And it might be more appropriate at the PIP level The other part that jumped out at me is the private road. If I remember the previous GDP, that was a boulevard road. Now it appears as if it's angled parking on one side and parallel parking on the other side. I'm curious, for example, if the parallel parking is pointing in one direction, are people expected to go to the end of the road, do a turn around and come back? Or are they gonna be backing out more than the 90-degree to then exit and traffic flow pattern? So they might be more PIP questions.
I can address those next. Yeah.
Perfect, all right, so we'll hold them for that.
Okay, anyone else have any GDP questions? Okay, this will come back next, at our next meeting, so we're gonna move on to item C, which is consideration of resolution 24-7-2423, approval of Phase 1 precise implementation plan, PIP, for 112 and 208 Owen Road by Slindy Realty Company, put forth by the Plan Commission. Doug, were you gonna do a little intro?
I can just grab the mic.
Okay, perfect.
Thanks. Thank you. So as mentioned, this is the PIP, the Precise Implementation Plan. So this is where we get into some of the more specifics. This is simply for Phase 1, which would be the Village Lane site, the 132-unit building of the 237 that were just discussed as part of the General Development Plan. So 132 units in total, 214 parking stalls are proposed with that. 96 of those being surface, which would include all of those on the street as well as those in front and behind of the building, as well as 118 of those underground covered within the underground parking stall. Ground floor amenities for this, with the retail aesthetic as already mentioned, will include the fitness center, community room, and leasing office. There's also a plaza deck right closest to the property boundary, providing a buffer between that and the existing residential on, I think it's on Anthony Place there. The plaza deck will include grills, seating, fire feature, lawn games, things like that. And there is also a sod pet run that is proposed along the western property boundary. And finally, the 5th floor of the building will include a common space with outdoor patio for tenants to use as well. So this came through the Plan Commission 2 times, once for a pre-hearing and then once for the formal consideration. It was at the same June 24th meeting where the PIP was considered and unanimously recommended to City Council as well. I'd be happy to begin addressing a couple of those questions. So one of the things with the General Development Plan, and I think that this project made use of this, is that you can look at the whole site rather than just individual, one component or the other. So the Commission, this, for example, is overparked for its needs versus Phase 2, with the inclusion of the street parking that's included there between the two. But the green space is less, again, owing somewhat to that street as well. The landscaping itself does exceed the points required, including all of the underground stalls. It's at about 3,500 points as defined by the city's ordinance. But the green space itself is less than the 30% that is targeted. I don't have the number to hand, but I think overall for the site, it was right around 28%, something like that, so it was close. And typically the Commission, sort of the goal of that is a programmed usable space as well, and not just sort of an open grassy area or something like that, but rather to include usable space, and of course with this they have the 5th story outdoor space as well, and things like that. So there were some comments, and you'll see those included in the conditions of approval that were recommended by the Commission about some of the trees and things like that could be considered administratively. But generally it's a highly landscaped site. There's a lot of evergreen trees and things on the western property boundary, again, for the buffer. But the Commission were comfortable with things like the outdoor space, the grilling, and sort of some of those tenant amenities that are included, that it falls slightly below the 30% specifically.
Bert and Jeff, did you have anything else to add?
He's right, it's 28%.
28%?
And it rounds to 29, but 28. So.
Good job, Jeff.
And again, since we're only dealing with the PIP for the Phase 1, the idea is that the buildings are balancing each other as a total development. One's underparked, one's overparked. Same thing is true of the landscaping. So when you come through for PIP on phase 2, if the plan commission feels like we need to add a little more, a few more trees or something to, you know, get it beyond the 28.
I
Or
see.
would, you know, but we felt comfortable with it, given the balancing between the two units.
Brian, did they answer your other questions?
Not all of them yet, but I'm confident they will be. With it, I just want to mention, like, the addition of additional trees wouldn't change the 28%. The 28% would still be the same because that's just green space. But the landscaping points, I think, is what you're getting at, is that
Right.
they're
Right.
exceeding
Right.
that both in phase 1 and phase 2
Right.
and as a total site. But if it's lacking in one, maybe
Right.
it could be bumped up
Right.
even more
Right.
in the second.
And I think during our previous GDP approval, we had essentially the same setup. So it was not technically at 30% at that time either.
Yeah, yeah, I think it
So
was
we've kind of
low.
just worked off that plan.
Right.
The next item had to do with the private road and the parking flow.
Yes, so there was definitely discussion of the circle at the end of the drive, that certainly for private vehicles would not be an issue and would be, I believe, kept clear. At all times, there'd be signage that sort of allows that to not be a traffic circle or something, but that there's enough room to swing a vehicle around. There was no discussion of sort of directional for the parallel parking specifically, but there was definitely commission discussion about some of the fire trucks and access and things like that. So certainly something I would imagine that during the signage and sort of signing of the development, and again, maybe with the second phase possibly, discussion of how that evolves. But I think generally the commission were comfortable with sort of the flow of the traffic moving through that space.
That backing out of those angled stalls, they would be backing out to turn, or would they all be forced to go to the end of the road, or would they back out?
Well, we have something very similar in our property in Green Bay, our 4th building, and what we find is a lot of people actually back into the stall so they can pull out.
Majority do.
So you kind of have a better exit than an entry. Just personal preference, but
And, okay, so if they're doing that, they're likely going through the circle, exiting, and then they're backing into the stall itself.
yeah.
It's quite common.
And then, is my memory serving me correct that there used to be a median?
I don't recall a median. I think we had
I think there was, and I think we just opened it up so it was more free-flowing. Do you remember?
I don't recall any.
It might have been one of the very early versions.
I think you saw
Yeah.
I think you're referencing the original, where the sword lateral was, like, in that drawing, I don't know, maybe.
Well, there was an idea at one time, I thought of a median down that private road between the two parking halves, which I think was probably increasing some of the green space in probably one of the very, very early drawings of it. And the width might not be there because you would just be robbing it from one of the two building spots, so I don't think it would be an increase. I think those are my key questions.
Brian, I'm looking at a rendering that does have a median. I believe I'm seeing Owen Road here.
Boulevard?
Oh, I mean on the private road
Yeah.
that splits the two buildings.
Yeah.
In a
Because,
very
okay.
early rendering or
Got it.
drawing,
Got
there
it.
may have been a median that went down to kind of separate the two out.
Understood.
So there could be some additional canopy trees
Sure.
and over the time, my guess is that got taken out for better traffic flow, better access.
I wonder with the taller height of the building, would the canopy trees thrive in that shaded environment? I'm sure there was, I don't know.
I would sure hope so because we're putting in a lot of canopy trees.
Yeah,
And they did a shade study in here, so I
We
think
did.
you're fine.
okay.
Yeah, the shade study's in there. It doesn't look like there's a significant impact on the neighbors to the west. There's some impact, but my guess is it's the same at 4 stories as it is at 5. So I'm not sure that's a detriment for the fifth story, for the shading to the west side, which is the most important here.
Yeah, and you're referring to west side would be Anthony Place.
Yeah.
And we have discussed that with the 3 property owners of the 8 units there, and every one of them was in support of this development.
They can't wait.
Yeah.
Teresa?
Well, since we're only approving phase 1 this evening, and
We're not even approving it,
Not
we're just
even- right.
discussing it.
discussing it, but phase 1 will be eventually approved individually from phase 2? Is that how I understand
The
it?
PIP.
Right, whenever we get to that place,
Yeah.
there's never gonna be a time where all at once, both phases are approved at one time, so to.
You will be approving both in the GDP.
Yeah.
The GDP applies to both
Okay.
buildings in total. The
Yeah.
PIP, that is also before us, but we're not going to approve tonight because this is first read. So both GDP and PIP, this is first read. So we'll be approving the GDP for both and then the PIP for just phase 1.
Okay.
Which is the west side, the
Right.
Village Lane side.
The reason I bring this up is because I was thinking about something Alder Moore had said about the green space requirement, which is that while one phase may not meet the requirement, when you put them all together, the requirement is met. So then
Closer.
I did not. I said it's closer.
Closer.
It's closer, okay.
Right, it's closer. It's slightly under, as these guys said. It was
Okay.
28% when it came through the first time. It's 28% now.
Okay.
And the Plan Commission was comfortable with that.
Okay.
And I was just saying that both on the parking front and the landscaping
Mhm.
front, the units do balance each other out in that regard.
Alder Holmquist, do you know whether, did the removal of the trees in the private road significantly change the green space requirement, or?
Yeah, my guess is from that original, and I got the approval nod from Doug, which I take as a positive that I'm understanding this correctly. If you had to increase the width between the two buildings to be able to put a median there, you would actually be taking green space away from the front of each of the two buildings, just to put it in the middle of the road, which would actually force all the traffic down one way, which would likely not be good from a traffic flow standpoint.
Okay.
If there was another exit at the end of this, there might be some reasoning to that, but their design probably ended up accomplishing the same thing as it relates to green space and traffic flow for the positive.
So at the end of it all, I'm hearing that you're comfortable with this.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and their landscaping is like significant. I mean,
Yeah.
we're not talking they're just scraping by.
Right.
It's significant. A lot of the landscaping is for the amenities of the individuals that live there, which I think our green space ordinance is a balance between people that live there as well as the general community. And so I think there's always kind of this balancing act between, if we pump up our landscaping, does that meet all of our green space requirements? Plan Commission has this discussion, and Nancy would be probably well-versed in helping us understand, like, this comes when we talk about green roofs all the time. Should that count or should it not? Well, the average person doesn't see a thing up there. But at the same time, it's a great amenity for the people that are there, and there is some benefit. Grasses and perennials, they don't count for landscaping points in our current plan still. Correct. We've talked over and over again, but should they? Because, you know, there are a lot of elements that I think they're gonna put in the plan that will be very, very beneficial to the residents here as well as the general community as it relates to the greenness of the building, which we've struggled with the 30% number being a hard, fast number, and that it, as Nancy pointed out, like it really is a heavy balance between the landscaping, the parking, and the open space, and how they all fit together.
Anyone else? Any questions? Lisa.
I am curious, not about the median in the private road, but from the drawing I'm seeing, the median on Owen Road, which I believe, is not there currently and would be added.
The current environment there, there's 3 entry points at Village Lanes alone. Well, let me take a step back. We will be adding a sidewalk in that median.
Yeah.
That doesn't currently exist. And then I think there might be some grass planting there, maybe around the signage, but nothing meaningful, from what I recall.
I think it would be a beautiful addition to that road.
Anyone else? And this will come back next meeting if anyone has any other questions.
Just
Doug?
to clarify that, I think that what looks like a median is actually because they're standing at the housing, the senior housing across the street. There's no median on
And so
on
Owen Road is on the other side of that.
Right, yeah.
Mm,
So, anyway.
Okay.
Sorry, I was just going to make one other point of information for those people that are interested, and that is that these, both Jeff and Bert, as well as the planning commission, are very aware of the bus route that's been approved by this body, and they will, again, the bus will be servicing Owen in this part of Owen, so.
Well, where is the nearest bus stop? Is it going to be near
It's-
Heritage, or is it
it's-
going to be on Monona Drive? I just saw
No,
something.
it's basically going to be what amounts to between Heritage and Monona Hills,
Oh, okay.
basically right about there. They need to get it far enough off of Monona Drive so that when the bus takes the turn, they're not stopping with 2 car lengths behind them.
Which makes sense. I just read a
yeah.
reference somewhere today saying there wasn't going to be one on Owen Road. And I
Yeah.
thought,
Yeah,
I don't think that was the case. so.
yeah.
Okay, anything else? All right, well, we'll see you in 3 weeks, I think, actually, right? Beginning of August. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Moving on, I'm going to actually take this things a little bit out of order and move item 2D down to the end, since we have Mr. Becker and Mr. Stolper here, and we'll just move on to the TID questions and then come back to that one at the end. Okay, so the next 3 items are all start from immediate approval. These are each declaring these different parcels blighted. So I guess we'll take them one at a time, but I think we probably just need to explain one time why we're taking them out of order.
I can go there.
Why don't you just explain it, and then I'll read the.
Yep, just, staff's requesting this be starred for one approval, just the blight determinations, not the creations, just in terms of keeping on, there's a very strict statutory timeline that we need to be on in terms of creation. So we're just, this will, by doing so, will allow us to continue with our usual 2-read process for the actual creations going forward. So in terms of just order of how we have to do things, the blight determination needs to be done prior to the actual creation. So we're asking just for the determinations themselves to be 1 read, and then we'll do just regular 2 reads on the creations.
All right,
Are the other 4 kids already have blight determinations?
two of them do, and the other 2 are not blight related, is that correct?
Correct.
Go
ahead, Gary.
Okay, so item 2E, consideration of resolution 24-7-2431, declaring the area of West Broadway Frontage Road, Gishold Drive, and WPS Drive a blighted area put forth by the Community Development Authority. Is there a motion to take this out of order?
Motion to take it out of order.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Is there a motion to approve this?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. Does Doug, did you, we're gonna.
Gary, why don't you go ahead? The blight designation has certain meanings within the state law. And Gary's the expert in that stuff, so go ahead.
Yep, so,
And does everyone know, Mr. Becker, you've testified here before, haven't you, Gary?
Yeah.
oh yeah, many times.
Our TID
Maybe
guy.
not with everybody, the current council, but
Okay,
yes.
go ahead.
Thank you. So, we're creating 7 tax increment districts in this process. 5 of them will be blight elimination. And for that, state statutes require that the city council make a finding of blight under 66.1333, which is the state's blight elimination law. That's also the same statutes that govern the Community Development Authority. And under those statutes, the Community Development Authority has the ability, or is authorized to act within blight elimination areas that have been declared by the City Council. TIF law requires that a blight elimination TIF have a finding by the City Council that the council has determined that that area is blighted, or at least 50% or more of the area is blighted. And so the resolutions you have in front of you tonight are to, number one, provide the documentation behind those determinations, and then two, the resolution will be the City Council's determination and agreement that those areas are blighted and meet the statutory definitions under law. So TID number 11, that blight finding was actually made quite a few years ago when TID number 5 was created. And that's this TID number 11 is an overlying taxing jurisdiction, and that it's being created over top of actually 2 other districts. Part of it is in TID 5, and part of it overlying TID number 4.
No, we're talking about.
5 is Heritage.
West Broadway, Gishold Drive. Is that-
Sorry, I thought we were going in order. I missed that.
I'm sorry, I'm just looking
We're
at the
taking
first
them all at
item
once,
here
but,
is the,
okay.
Okay.
yeah. So which one is that?
Yeah, so TID 11 is the Owen Road one that we were just talking about.
Okay, and the one that we're actually discussing here, though, is the,
Is TID 15.
the frontage
I think.
road, Gishold
Yeah, okay.
Drive, and I'm not sure what number that is. Doug, do you know?
Yeah, that's 15.
That's 15?
It's TID number 15.
Okay. I'm sorry, it doesn't say here.
That's
Yep.
the east side of Gishold.
Right,
There's another one that's on the west side.
okay.
That's right. Yes, so TID number 15, the blight finding for this actually covers both of those areas, so for both TID 14 and TID 15. So that resolution covers both of those, but they're contiguous, they're adjacent to one another. And the reason for this area being blighted is essentially obsolescence. The office buildings are obsolete. There's deferred maintenance occurring on the site. The parking lots are becoming fairly deteriorated as we speak. There's little opportunity to lease that space any longer with the office market the way it is. So the property owners are in the process of selling that property for redevelopment.
Okay. Any questions from anyone? Okay, hearing none, then all in favor of approving the resolution regarding West Broadway Frontage Road, Gishold Drive, and WPS Drive, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. I'm just going on these in order in their
Okay,
agenda.
I
So the
should
next
have brought
one
my
is,
agenda up.
next one is, this is also started for immediate approval, consideration of Resolution 24-7-2432, declaring an area at the northwest corner of Monona Drive and Nichols Road a blighted area, also put forth by the Community Development Authority. Is there a
Move
motion
to take this out of order?
Motion to take it out of order?
Nancy, do you want a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. And this is the Sorge property,
This is
correct?
Sorge property, TID
And-
number 16, proposed TID number 16.
Okay.
And this also will be a blight elimination district. There are significant drainage issues on that property. If you can visualize it, there's a very steep slope that goes down Nichols and continues on that property. Water drains actually into the basement of the Sorge building, and the 2 homes that are along Nichols that are to the west of that. We went through those buildings and saw significant water damage. And there's really little remedy to that without significant changes to the site. So those properties are found to be blighted because of the deterioration caused by poor site drainage.
Any questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. And the third one, also start for immediate approval, consideration of Resolution 24-7 2433, declaring the northernmost parcel on Monona Drive a blighted area, put forth by the Community Development Authority. Is there a motion to approve this? Or, I'm sorry, is there a motion to take this out of order?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And this refers to the,
This is the East Side Club,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
and that's number 17.
That's number 17.
Is there a motion to approve this?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay.
And this is also being found to be blighted due to underutilization as a primary factor, as well as obvious deferred site maintenance and deterioration of site conditions. We found that there's a much significantly higher and better use of that site than what its current use is. And that's part of the contributing factor to the underutilization of the site.
Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, now we are going to move on to actually creating the TIDs. And this is the first read for all of these. Item H, consideration of Resolution 24-7-2424, creating tax increment district number 11, put forth by the Community Development Authority. Is there, or there won't be a motion. I guess if you want to just explain.
TID number 11 is the Owen Road tax increment district, as I started explaining a few minutes ago. This area is overlying two different tax increment districts. This will be an overlay, so any new increment that occurs in this TIF district will accumulate to, or accrue to TID number 11, to the newest TIF.
Mayor, I have a question. Does the council understand, has there been enough background why we're doing this now?
We did explain that at our budget workshop, but does anybody have any questions about that?
Okay.
See, did you have something?
I don't have any questions about it, but I'm actually wondering for the public's benefit, if it might be possible to actually put
Sure.
the maps up as we're discussing them, because.
Okay, I'll try and keep this brief.
Okay.
It's difficult sometimes, I realize, but state law says that any municipality can only have up to 12% of its equalized valuation in districts. And right now, Monona's percentage is 11 point something. So we're relatively close. We've got about $15 million of headroom. That's it. We have projects on the board, including the one on the Whitehorse property, the Bisa property, which is the old Monona Garden Restaurant, and then the property at Monona Drive and Dean, that entire block. When those come on the tax roll, the odds are decent that we're going to be over the 12%, which puts us out of the business of creating any more TIDs. And it is those TIDs which allow us to do TIF financing. So without the TIDs, there will be projects that people will want to do that probably won't be able to happen because of the fact that we won't be able to do that. So the creation of the 7 districts, there have been developers talking about wanting to do projects in each of these 7 districts. And so that's why we've created the districts that we are creating. In some cases, there's 2 districts that are right next to each other, but we have to do 2 of them to keep each of them under the $15 million headroom. So that's kind of the overlay. The CDA's been talking about this since probably last October to get ahead of this so that it didn't have the problem. The last thing I'll say is the state equalization comes out around August 15th, and so anything that's created before that date by the council goes back to the prior January 1st assessment and equalized value. If it's created after that, it goes to the next January 1st. And so we are afraid that this coming August, a month from now roughly, that we run the risk of being over, and we just don't want to take the chance.
Any questions about that? Nancy?
I actually do have one, Tom. First of all, thank you for the explanation, as always. It seems to me, a number of years ago, because it was when Brian Gatto was here as city administrator, there was some discussion that the state legislature was considering bumping up to.
They were going to go to
like
15. 15 was actually
Yeah,
the,
14 or 15%
That-
as opposed to the 12%. That just completely died?
that completely died.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know the details of why, but it's kaput completely.
It may come back eventually.
Well, but not in perhaps our lifetime.
Okay.
Any questions? And thank you for doing that. We are back to item H, which is tip number 11, which is Owen Road. Any questions about that one? Okay, then we'll move on to the next item, which is number 12, consideration of resolution 24-7-2425, creating tax increment district number 12, put forth by the Community Development Authority. And this is the
River-
intersection
River
between
Place.
Mechanic and Broadway, south of that,
Number 12 is River
Yes.
Place.
Right.
River Place, yep.
And the boundaries do cross Monona Drive at River Place. It picks up some frontage on Pier 37, on the Pier 37 development as well.
Oh, okay.
So it does cross the road. The reason we did that was that we weren't sure if there was going to be a replat as part of the redevelopment, and so this is being proposed as a mixed-use tax increment district with a 20-year life, and the mixed-use TIF rules require that no more than 35% of the area of the TIF be newly platted residential. So, so just to make sure, just to ensure that if, in case there is a new plat on that property, we picked up enough land area so that it would be no more than 35% of the total.
Any questions?
The new dental office that is basically done at this point, but which was not done on January 1st, is in this district. So we will have some immediate increment.
Okay. Any questions? All right, next, item J, consideration of resolution 24-7-2426, creating tax increment district number 13, also put forth by the CDA, and this is the Pirate Island
Yes.
area.
Yes.
I'm going to talk a little bit about that one, or if you have anything else to add.
Yep. So TID number 13 is being created as a rehab and conservation tax increment district. And it has, actually has two parts to it. The Pirates Island part is the reason it's being created as a rehab and conservation district. That's a really unique area of affordable housing in the city of Monona. And the TIF is being created to help conserve and rehabilitate that housing stock. But equally important are three vacant lots along Broadway at Falcon Circle, at both ends of Falcon Circle. And those lots are vacant. They've been sitting vacant. They are brownfield sites. They've had a history of contamination that's been cleaned up at this point, and they're ripe for development. But there are site issues that will likely require TIF in order for those to develop.
You're speaking of Kevin's property?
Say again?
Falcon Circle? You're speaking of, yeah, Doug striking his head, yeah. For those of you that don't know or haven't been in Monona long enough, the properties on Falcon Circle that he's referring to, there used to be a gas station there. Which always ends up a brownfield.
Invariably comes with problems.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Questions, anyone? Next
I
item,
did-
K.
Mayor?
Doug, I'm sorry.
So just, I know that, I think this came up at the CDA meeting, but just to be clear, creating this TIF, the intent is not to eliminate the existing apartments on Pirate Island. It would be to provide a way for them to be renewed.
Yeah, exactly. It would actually be against the reason for creating the TIF to
Right.
destroy that housing.
Right.
Yeah.
It gives us the ability to perhaps participate in some channel cleaning up and that kind of thing as well.
And a lot of these are fairly affordable in terms of the cost.
Right.
Very affordable housing, and a lot of it in that area.
Moving on to item K, consideration of resolution 24-7-2427, creating tax increment district number 14 and redevelopment area number 14, put forth by the CDA. And if you want to explain the two, the difference, the redevelopment area and the.
Yeah, so normally when we create when we create a blight area or designation of blight, what normally goes along with that is the establishment of a redevelopment district so that the CDA can undertake activities, redevelopment activities within that area. And in this case, we did a single blight determination that covers two different areas. So the west side of this is TID number 14, and it'll be redevelopment area number 14. So for the CDA's purposes, it's a redevelopment area. For the city council's purposes, it's a tax increment district. And the CDA can work with both of those with the council's authorization. So this is the kind of the west or the east side of the Southtown Mall area where Flora Decor is located, and the outlots that are in front of the Southtown Mall area, and it goes up to the west side of Gisholt.
Questions, anyone? Okay, item L, consideration of resolution 24-7-2428, creating tax increment district number 15 and redevelopment area number 15, also put forth by the CDA.
And this area is the WPS property that's to the east of Gisholt. And also some of the other office buildings. There's a cluster of small office buildings along Gisholt in there. They include most of those, but not the two that are up front along Broadway.
Questions, anyone? Doug?
Oh, those are, I'm sorry, those are
in there.
But they were not in the part of the blight determination.
Yeah,
Underwood?
yeah, just a question about, we have two TIF districts right next to each other, basically share a boundary. And the only reason we're doing that is to avoid the 12% thing, right?
To avoid the headroom problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I guess I just want to ask if we're sure that that's okay.
You mean to split the two to stay under the 15 million?
Right.
Yeah, we have looked into that and verified that that is within the city's prerogative to do.
Okay.
15%, right?
15 million. What Tom was saying was to stay under the 12%. We're currently at 11 something, which translates into roughly $15 million. So each district that we create has to add less than $15 million.
Cumulatively, we're going to wind up at
Oh, yeah.
15 or 18, I don't know, some bigger number. I haven't done the calculation.
Nancy? did you-
Yeah, so obviously, we just approved the blight districts, but I'm curious if there's been discussion with WPS or just in general with the CDA around, I mean, I know that you said that the buildings are older. I don't know what older means anymore. I don't know about you, but number one, and number two, certainly the landscape is quite filled in urban areas with older buildings that have been rehabbed for loft-style housing and other types of activities besides the original purpose of being an office building. So I guess I'm just wondering if there's been any discussion of, or whether those buildings would even be something that would be attractive from that standpoint. I mean, you know, the Americans, as you well know, are really good at tear downs.
The
And it
original,
costs us money.
the original WPS building, which is the one that is just to the east of their main driveway
Yep,
and on Broadway. That building is, people have talked about, well, we could make this into lofts and anything like
Right.
that. The cost is enormous to do that. Great big thick concrete walls.
okay.
It just is functionally, nobody will do it. Nobody, it makes no economic sense.
Okay.
So that
Just was
needs to be
curious too, when
blown
the
up.
building was, do you remember when that building was actually built?
That
I mean, we're
building
talking
was
50 years
probably
old or-
built in 1960. Now, that's a
Okay.
guess.
Okay. Thank you.
And of course, WPS doesn't need all that office space anymore.
Right.
Frankly, a lot of people don't need the same amount of office space.
Right.
The IRS generally allows 29 years for depreciation of office buildings. 39 years. That's the account.
Any other questions about it? All right, moving on to item M, consideration of resolution 24-7-2429, creating tax increment districts number 16 and redevelopment area number 16, also put forth by the CDA, and this is the Sorge property.
Yes.
Yep. This tax increment district includes the Sorge property as well as the apartment building along, just to the north along Monona Drive, and the two houses to the
Between the
west.
Sorge Building and Gunderson's. That-
Yep, yep. And this TIF district is being created because the CDA is expecting a development proposal from that site. It is a blighted site. The buildings are significantly deteriorated on the property, and it's time for redevelopment of those parcels.
Questions, anyone? And finally, item N, consideration of resolution 24-7-2430, creating tax increment district number 17 and redevelopment area number 17, also put forth by the CDA, and this is the East Side Club.
This is the East Side Club, and again, the whole purpose of this is to try to encourage a higher and better use of the site than what currently exists.
And there have been current discussions ongoing between the club and various parties to do something. Nothing's imminent, but
They're
something will
actively
happen.
looking for something.
It's way too valuable a piece of property to have what is on it there.
Questions? Nancy?
So, I'm sure there's some people in Monona that would say, exactly because it is such a valuable piece of property, why would the city need to be involved in supporting a development there with TIF financing? Because, you know, it's about as desirable as it gets.
Don't know that we necessarily will.
Okay,
The creation of the TID allows the city to capture the increment, the tax on the increment. Whether there's a development agreement and the CDA, and by extension, the city participates in some manner, shape, or form, is to be determined in the future.
The city has always used a significant portion of TIF revenue for public improvements.
sure,
A lot of the city streets like Monona Drive and Broadway
sure.
were redeveloped because of TIF. And sometimes a larger share has to go to the developer, and sometimes a lesser share or none goes to the developer. Is answered when the question comes up. So for in this case, we're creating the TIF district to capture what we believe will be some increment, and there are a number of public projects in the area that could be funded if there's no incentive needed.
We can spend within a half a mile of the boundaries,
Right.
as well as within the boundaries.
Right.
Questions, anyone? Okay, that takes us through the list. Well, this will be back on the next council agenda, final approval, all of these.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank
both.
you.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Stay dry.
Yeah.
Thanks, Doug. Okay, moving back up, and this item is start for immediate approval. Item D, consideration of resolution 24-7-2434, authorizing a contract amendment with Miller Communications for Phase 3 referendum communications consulting services, put forth by the city administrator. Neil, would you like to explain why this is start?
Yep, thank you, Mayor. I will do so. Originally, this, folks would remember the original proposal from Miller Communications had identified 3 phases in it. Phase 1 and 2 took us through essentially the community survey. That is what the letter of agreement, basically the contract we have with Mueller was for Phase 1 and Phase 2. At this point, this is bringing forward for Phase 3. This is actually the public engagement component of this. Essentially, once the city, we have survey results and we've selected what we believe the question is going to be, this is essentially the public education component that would occur after that would happen. So essentially, again, Phase 1 and Phase 2, we're under the original letter of agreement. We're proposing an amendment not to exceed.
We're mainly talking about why we're taking this out.
Yep, and I'm just saying, 37,741. Reason we would like to do this is obviously just simply because of the time frame required to get the question on the ballot. We need to have essentially that decision made by middle of August. So we are under a tight time frame to get public engagement out the door once the question is established. So we would like to have this contract in place to proceed with Mueller as originally planned in their original proposal. Their follow-up proposal with more detail is included in the packet.
And as I mentioned at Finance and Personnel, I checked with Aline earlier, and the last day she can send out ballots for the November election is September 19th, which means we
The
really
last
got.
day?
Yeah, that's the final day, right, Aline? They have to be mailed.
For requests that are in prior to that date.
Okay, right, I'm sorry for absentee, but I guess my point
So I
is.
start sending them out that day.
Oh, you do start. I
Start,
thought you said
no.
that was the last day you could send them.
Statutorily, I have to get it out by that day.
By the
So
19th.
if I have ballots on the day before, I can send it on the 18th. But we
Okay.
generally get them
Just
that
with
day.
room to spare.
Yes.
So I guess my point is, though, ballots will start going out
Yeah.
on the 19th of September, so we really need to start
Mhm.
moving on a plan to get communications out about this, which is why it's start also.
Absolutely.
Because our next meeting is until the first Monday in
Figure it out.
August, so. Is there a motion to take this out of order?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And then is there a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll move.
Second.
Neil, do you want to explain? I guess if, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, just again, obviously, we've completed the first round of this. I think we're currently at, last tally, we've received 937 surveys. So I think that's, I'm pretty sure that's approaching 30%. So that's just really an outstanding response rate for a survey. I think they were requiring 10% to feel that it was going to be scientifically significant. So we're excited that whatever the results are going to be will be fairly accurate. Their comfort level is going to be pretty good with that. So we are meeting with the consultant on this, having the internal, for the first, probably still be tabulating some remaining paper surveys will be entered in. But we should have hopefully some preliminary results as early as this week. And then we'll be meeting with council on the 25th. That's just as a reminder to kind of do our budget workshop related to establishing the question. So we'll be presenting results. Miller will be here presenting the official survey results that evening, and then we'll be hopefully selecting a question and moving forward with the engagement process identified here.
And the resolutions to approve the questions will be in the August
Correct.
meetings. Correct. So any questions?
I do have some
Nancy?
questions. I don't know that it specifically relates to the contract, but more questions that our constituents have had about what's happened to date as it relates to the referendum. I don't know if you want to bring it up in this context or not.
About, could you say, I'm not sure what it. I
Yeah,
heard
so,
everything
well, there's a couple of things. One is that there's been a number of people that have wondered about the survey mailing methodology. suggesting that mailing, concerns that mailing one survey per household, even though there was an opportunity to contact City Hall, was backwards, is some might say, and that it might have made more sense to send multiple surveys with multiple codes to households, and then if there's only one adult, only one gets filled out. So I'm just, and I know that, so there was questions around that, so I'm just wondering if publicly we can talk about that a little bit. And then the second thing is, the people were saying it would be nice to know what's gonna be cut.
Well, that will
Even-
be part of the information for the referendum.
Exactly. So what I've said to people is that the staff has been instructed to prepare budgets in preparation, assuming potential cut or passage, and that'll all be part of what is forthcoming to the community, that this was just to take the temperature, if you will,
Right,
of the
it's not actually
community.
voting on anything.
Right, they weren't, the survey wasn't a vote, right,
Yeah.
right.
I can
So,
respond to that, Mayor.
yeah.
Yeah, obviously, certainly the concern from staff standpoint, and I believe from our consultant, was to ensure a statistically accurate survey.
Right.
So by simply mass flooding surveys out to individual households is not a good way to guarantee how to do that.
Right.
I think there could be the opportunity of the same person filling out 3 surveys without ever even
Right.
showing that other person's in their household. So we felt that the compromise was, 1 per household, with the ability to request the additional one through the city. I would say the almost 30% response rate, being 3 times what they needed for accuracy, probably is a good indicator that I think that there wasn't a general issue with people getting access to the survey. I think the couple of complaints I dealt with directly, Alder, the amount of time they spent writing up the email or the Facebook post about it, they could have called the survey and actually had the survey done in a little bit. So I have a little bit of certainly issue on that. The survey was available for about 3.5 weeks. Was the amount of time that it was out and available. Most individuals I spoke with directly, I know our front office staff did as well, were I think we probably did at least 30 or 40 different 30 to 40 surveys that we sent out at additional requests where folks stopped in to get a copy. Didn't really hear any other complaints from them when folks came in. So I understand that maybe some folks maybe felt that it was an inconvenience to have to do that, but I think in terms of the trade-off was to ensure the statistical validity of the survey. We went with our consultant's recommendation on how to do that.
And this was the survey company recommended that.
Yeah, absolutely.
They do surveys all the time.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, I'm not
No, I know.
suggesting otherwise, and that's what I've explained. I just wanted to make sure that we
Yep.
discussed it here, since it has been something. that's
Yeah,
been
no,
raised.
absolutely. And then as far as your other question, Alder, regarding the potential cuts, we have had some of those conversations at the staff level in terms of at least asking departments to identify some of those things. If whatever survey question or whatever referendum question we put forward does not pass, there would be, even if the base level, the option 1 is the one that is selected, and even if it does pass, there's likely going to be a need for some reductions in costs to make that, to fund that. The referendum itself wouldn't cover everything on there. So we have certainly started to identify some of those things. We really aren't in a position to, we didn't really want the survey to be a threatening type of initiative from the city. We wanted to say, look, this is what we need. This are the costs associated with doing that. Here's the education behind that. If we start getting the situation where either depending on what the survey results are, or as we're going through the education campaign, we will certainly take a hard look at some of those things as far as options. But right now we're proceeding with the idea that one of those referendum scenarios would pass. But if they do not, there has already been directions, as you said, directions given to staff to prepare like basically a negative budget in terms of probably significant cuts to departments.
Right. So part of that education campaign will be to specifically say what will most likely be cut what would be cut if the referendum doesn't pass.
Right.
So people are very clear when they're making the vote
Because
what the ramifications are.
if it doesn't pass, we are still committed to doing something about these compensation
Correct.
problems.
Yep.
And in order to do that, we'll have to cut.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
As we all know, it's a fair amount of money.
Yep.
Yeah, so. Any other questions about this? We basically would just be extending the current contract.
That's correct.
So do we need a roll call on this?
No, it's 37,000.
So it is actually, even though we don't have the actual extension here. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, would the clerk please call the roll?
Alder DeBoer,
Aye.
Alder Holmquist.
Aye.
Alder Moore,
Aye.
Alder Wood,
Aye.
Alder Rademacher. Alder Bernstein.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
And just to be clear, Mayor, actually, the letter of agreement with the signature is included in the packet, actually.
Oh, okay,
So.
all right. Okay, moving on. Reports of committees, commissions, et cetera. If you have any sustainability or DEI effort news, please include that as well. Alder DePula.
No reports.
Alder Holmquist.
No reports?
Okay. Alder Moore.
Just as an additional follow-up to the Harry Whitehorse International Wood Sculpture Festival, we had had some discussion and looked at the numbers for the week, and we're estimating that we had, over the course of the festival, had about 14,000 people at the festival, which is amazing for a first year. And perhaps just as significant, since the festival finished, we've had regular visits to take care of the sculptures and to wrap up some things in the house, et cetera. And we're estimating that there's been about 20 people per hour for about all the daylight hours that have come by to look at the sculptures. I mean, it's just been a true sculpture park in that regard, that we've had that kind of volume since the festival finished, and as of the beer garden last week, that was the last day for them to be at San Damiano, and I know a ton of people have asked, so if you haven't read it on Facebook, 5 of the sculptures, there's 2 steps to this permanent sculpture installation. The first is there's a curing period of about a year for them to dry out slowly and in a controlled outdoor environment so that they don't crack. And then after that year, they're installed permanently. For the curing year, 5 of them have gone to Obrick Gardens, and the other 6 have gone over to Garver, both of which have the environments needed to protect them. And among other things, we're grateful that grateful to both locations, certainly, but we're grateful because, among other things, San Damiano, because of all the rains, has a gigantic number of earwigs that found the sculptures quite attractive as their home. So we were spending, and I should say, with Jean and Stacy most especially, we're spending a lot of time trying to keep the earwigs out of the sculptures and sealing them in a way that the earwigs would not find them attractive, but still allow the curing. It's always, things you don't expect. So.
I think Alder Wood and I that was an earwig, wasn't it?
I think so, yes.
On our
There is.
desk here between the 2 of us, really. So. Okay, any other news?
No, that's it.
Okay, Alder Wood.
Parks Board met and discussed the capital budget for the second time. Other than that, I would just there was a fair amount of damage, as you can see, in Winnequa Park from the festival, just because of the weather, the
Yeah.
timing. So staff will be busy, I think, working to repair that as much as they can. And that's it.
Alder Rademacher.
I was just going to report on tourism sustainability and landmarks. Our last tourism meeting, we had a fantastic grant awarded to the Monona Grove, I think it's called MG Sings. And you may know them, you know, they do these tremendous competitions at the high school. You know, might have had the experience that I did one year where you just happen to find yourself driving around town and you say, why are there hundreds of buses in the parking lot of Monona Grove High School? Like, oh, I get it. When people are coming in from near and far, all over, staying overnight in Monona, it just is the perfect match for the work of that commission, and I'm really happy that they came before the commission for that. Under the, Mayor, I'm sorry, are we supposed to be giving our committee reports now, or this is
Yeah.
this? Okay, all right, for some
You're just
reason-
supposed to include DEI and sustainability
Yes, okay,
stuff if you
got it,
have it.
got it, got it,
Anything.
got it.
Yep.
As far as DEI goes, if anyone did get a chance to go out to the 4th of July, the community festival this year, there was an extraordinary Latin band. It had the whole place dancing. We had the drag bingo. It was just fantastic. So many great initiatives that are really being intentionally brought to our community, which I'm really appreciative of. Also, of course, tonight, thank you to my colleagues for accepting the report of the DEIB committee. They worked very hard to put those recommendations together. In Sustainability Committee, I just wanted to share with you, you may have driven by, for Earth Day, there is an annual electronics recycling event, and we got the results back. It was quite successful. This year we collected 10,059 pounds of electronic waste, which is higher than last year, which none of us expected, because we just sort of expected that we've done this for so many years that certainly, like, people just must not have any more stuff in their house, but that's just not the case. So there continues to be a need, and we continue to be happy to provide that service. It's extremely affordable. It's only, $300, I think, that we pay for mailers to 1,000 households. We had, streams of traffic coming in, as I said in the last meeting, but I didn't have the weight. So we had 565 pounds of CPUs, 1,259 pounds of Freon items, like air conditioners and such, 3,000 pounds of appliances. I'll just pick that out as some of the top interesting points there. Really great stuff. Also, I'll mention under sustainability that, I don't know about you, maybe it's just me, because I'm looking for it, but as I walk and drive around the community, I am smiling all the time when I see so many people who seem to have traded in their turf grass for flowers. There's just flowers everywhere, front yards full of flowers. It's just a really nice sight, and I just wanted to draw that out and just praise those folks who are doing that work with the little space that they have that they can control. And I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you. Alder Bernstein.
I don't have a report.
Okay. City Administrator?
Just a couple things, Mayor. Just to kind of build on the report on the Monona Community Festival, wanted to certainly send my appreciation to our police and fire departments, as well as our park staff, for all the work they did, certainly with the weather being the challenge that it presented. It was a challenge that we anticipated, but I think we handled it pretty well. Also, compliments to the festival staff on site for During Het. We essentially had 3 check-ins with them during the night of the fireworks. So once at 6:30, once at 7:30, and then once at 9:30, keeping an eye on the weather front that was moving in. Very collaborative, very cooperative. Essentially, we were both watching the same radar screen as it looked like there was impending doom coming down on the festival that was projected to get there around 10 p.m. Right after the fireworks. But fortunately, the system actually slowed down at one point. Apparently, according to the National Weather Service, the front actually backed up 30 miles at one point before it started coming forward again. So that delay, which delayed it, the weather, the really bad weather until after midnight, so we were allowed to let the beer tent continue on as scheduled. So much rejoicing there from the organizers, and I'm sure for everybody else who was still out there. But again, it was extremely collaborative, just so compliments to our staff as well as the festival staff for just the great communication that allowed the night to go off pretty much without a hitch for the most part. So. Just we have tomorrow, we're getting our ad hoc committee for the public safety building is reviewing construction manager statements of qualifications. We'll be getting those in tomorrow. Again, just to remind folks, this is the individual who will actually help us establish a detailed cost estimate of what improvements to the City Hall and public safety building may cost. It is not a approval of any sort of project, but it's actually giving us enough detail, an approximate design in a hard enough detail that actually will give us a pretty solid number that we'll be able to bring back and share with the council to, again, further evaluate as we go. But this is a critical step, I think, in going forward to evaluating what our options are. Did want to make a note on another event that happened, our Pride Story Time with our library down at Grant Crossing Park here about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. It's a hugely successful event, very well attended. The weather, again, cooperated for the day. It was a little soggy during the event, but again, very well attended. Want to thank the park staff, the library staff, and police department staff for ensuring that it was a nice, safe, well-attended event, and really all around was good communication on the event going forward. And I think look forward to establishing additional events with those teams going forward. So we're excited about that. Just a note, since Chief Cheney is not here today, while we are not directly sending any officers over to any of the National Convention items, the Republican Convention in Milwaukee, the chief is certainly in communication with the appropriate federal agencies to just kind of keep an eye on security, certainly after the events this weekend. It was a little extra concern over there was already going to be elevated concern risk possibly out there. So now, so just so we know that our staff, our police department is in communication with those federal agencies. As we're aware, certainly all of the Madison hotels are very much full. I'm guessing our Monona ones likely are as well for this week. So we know folks will be traveling back and forth to Milwaukee and just trying to make sure that everyone has a safe experience while they're here in Wisconsin. So.
Aren't our police officers on those buses?
They were negotiating possibilities on that, but we did not get any. We essentially, I think, Bill, you may have even been involved in helping review those. We essentially did not come to an agreement on how those were going to proceed, so we did not end up officially sending any officers for that purpose.
Yeah, to the city's credit, there was the agreement that Milwaukee was proposing had some fairly draconian terms in it with respect to we would only get reimbursed if they got reimbursed from the feds. If our officers were harmed, it would be our responsibility, not theirs, which is the opposite of most mutual aid. I raised those issues with the chief, and to his credit, he basically told Milwaukee, we'll just respectfully decline under those terms.
Interesting.
And that's my report, Mayor, nothing else.
And Aline, I totally forgot to ask you, and Bill, so do you have anything?
Yes, August 13 is the next election. In-person voting starts July 30th and goes through August 9th. That'll be Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. The last day to request an absentee ballot to be mailed is August 8th. Any questions, reach out to me.
And the absentees have already gone out, right?
Yes, they have.
Attorney Cole, did you have anything?
He's not here, but I probably would share I think, nice story about your police department. I was reviewing a police report in preparation for a pretrial conference for municipal court, and it was a driver that eluded the officer. There was a short, high-speed chase. It was a high-risk stop. The officer had to unholster their weapon, that sort of thing. I get to the bottom and I'm looking at the officer that's cited and the responded to the scene. It's your police chief. And it got me thinking that there's been several of those now where Chief Cheney has been the officer responding. You have Deputy Chief Duman, who anybody that's been in City Hall knows half the time she's manning the 911 center. You have Lieutenant Weigel that is often out on calls. And as much as the police department budget is a large part of the budget for the city, you all have a command staff that is a working command staff. And I think that really says something for the city and for your department.
Yeah, this isn't just the fire chief who's a working chief. It's,
Yep.
I mean, being involved in calls and.
And Jerry's on, if you need any questions for him too.
Yeah, right. And for Jerry, I can see you on Neil's screen, but not on the big screen. Did you have anything to report?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say props to Chief Cheney as well, because I know he's out there very frequently, as are Sarah and Kurt and all of our officers. They just do an amazing job. I stuck around just to say, thank you to the Perry Whitehorse Festival. They did give a nice donation to the fire department for our volunteers being out there all week. Nothing but really cool remarks from all of our staff, other than it being hot and the nesting ground for earwigs. So you got a volunteer that has nightmares about earwigs now. That's what happened out there. But a big thank you. I met with Gene and Stacy out there end of last week, and they gave a donation to the fire department for being out there and supporting the event, which is very appreciated. I'll also echo our city administrator. The festival went exceedingly well. For as wet as the park was, big thank you to our parks department. They're doing a lot of work to try and restore it. Overall, it went very well, very minor calls, a lot of collaboration, not just with the festival staff folks, but also with Carnival. The Carnival was very easy to work with this year. They did a very good job of shutting things down when they needed to shut them down, as we all agreed on. And overall, it was just a really good event. But the last thing I wanted to bring up, I understand through finance, EMS revenues are a concern. I've been trying to pass on the reasons for why revenue is delayed and where it's coming from and why. I've been speaking with EMS MC. They are more than happy to come out and present it to the council themselves, so you can actually ask the billing company questions and not use me as a middle person. So if that's something that the council or finance would like to see, they're more than happy to come out and explain why the confluence of all these events is leading to the delayed revenues coming in. It's not a Monona problem, it's more of a national problem than anything. But the answers that I give you may sound better coming from them rather than from me. So if that's something that the council or finance would like to see, I'm happy to set that up. I know some of our neighbors have had their executive vice president out recently to come out and talk about all the factors leading into this and why they feel that our revenues are going to be fine by the end of the year. So if that's something the council or finance would like, I'm happy to set that up.
Okay, thank you. I think that's something Neil and Mark and I have been discussing, and I think last we heard from Mark, most of the payments that were expected are here. Isn't that what he told us last
I
week?
think a significant number came.
Yeah.
A significant number did certainly come in this last month, Chief. I don't know if you had anything else to add to that, but.
Yeah. That doesn't mean that it meets what's budgeted, but most
Right.
of the outstanding ones have been paid, from what Mark.
Correct. So
Yep.
all of the calls that were backlogged have been billed out, so all the charges are there. And the numbers that they look at are not just what we billed out, what we collected, but what we've traditionally collected over the years by percentage.
Mm-hmm.
And based on what we billed out and based on our collection percentage last year, we're slated to hit our budget by the end of the year.
Mark will be happy to hear that, because we have some questions about that, but we'd be happy to meet with you privately about that, I think, when we have the right documentation and everything, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to make sure it's out there.
Yep.
That I'm more than happy to bring in the billing company themselves and let them
Yep, and I know Mark has been talking to them also. Yep,
Yeah.
so thank you.
I'm very happy with this month, and we'll see where next month goes, so that's all I think.
Okay, thank you. I guess I don't have much. Reminder, the senior center concerts start tomorrow night. They're the next 3 Tuesdays, from 6:30 to 8 over at Winnequa, and they're always a lot of fun, I think, and they sell some beverages, and there's some food carts there. And then they take a week break, I think, and the final one is the night of National Night Out, which is the one where Shalani's group is going to be playing.
Oh, wonderful.
Which will be, that's a great Latin band as well,
Yeah.
so. There are no appointments tonight, and last thing's adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned, thank you.
Boy, he's gonna owe you a favor. That was quite the.
You know, the way I speed, I always need to stay on the good side.
No.
Good night, Ethan.
Thanks, Edith.
Good night. You should have seen that contract Milwaukee proposed. I'm astonished the number of communities that agreed to it, because it was basically the opposite. You know, normally with mutual aid,